Chris, how you doing, pal?
Good. How are you doing?
Not bad, well, not bad. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I was pretty excited when you asked me to come on. So
Yeah, brilliant. What time is it there at the moment? But midday, probably.
12:15. It's like lunchtime.
All right, cool, cool. It's just gone 5:15 here, so this is quite a good time difference. Actually, I've done a couple so far, and it's been maybe like 11 or 12 at night here to try and
Yeah,
accommodate people. But
that's why that's why I figured it would probably be better just to do it like during lunchtime here, and it's not too late over there. I remember when I fought over there, it was trying to start drinking, and it was like 10 in the morning. So
yep, you were. That's a. Do you know? I'll give you an introduction in a wee second, but just when you mentioned that, it was one of the UFC cards you were on was in Dublin, wasn't it?
yep.
Yep. Was that one of McGregor's? It must have been one of McGregor's
Yeah,
headlining.
it was McGregor Brandao.
Okay, okay. But
That
that's
was
one of the things that I want to chat to you about later is obviously your experiences in both the UFC and Bellator. But there's plenty of time we can get to that.
yeah.
Probably keep you for about an hour. Is that going to be okay?
Yeah. I wouldn't, however long, doesn't matter to me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Right, guys. So we are joined today by Chris Dempsey. I've wrote some of your accomplishments down just so we can quickly go through them. First of all, you've got a political science degree from Pittsburgh University, two-time NCAA AllAmerican. I want to talk to you about that as well because there's so much information I want to learn from myself actually on that. Competitor in the UFC and in Bellator, and you've kind of moved into more of a grappling career now as well.
Yeah. That's what I've been focusing on, but between grappling and coaching and stuff, so
Fantastic.
I don't get
So,
hit in the head so many times.
do you know it's so prevalent? I'm actually working at the moment to get one of the specialists here in the UK onto the podcast, who is an expert in head injuries and concussions and things. The for being involved in wrestling and mixed martial arts, is that something that you were conscious of to try and move away from that?
So that was pretty much why I made the decision to kind of go on to the grappling side and not so much the fighting side. Um, I used to be able to get hit with everything in the head, and I would just keep walking through it. I mean,
Yep.
so many stories from college that we won't go into on here, but that I've gotten hit in the head with things, and it just never affected me. And then having three knockouts in a row and like four out of the last five, kind of we looked at it as something had changed in my brain, and that it was probably better off to not do that anymore.
Yep.
Um, we have I know I don't know if you ever seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith.
I actually haven't. My wife actually watched it. I do need to get to that, but yeah.
Well, those doctors are from Pittsburgh, so
Yeah.
I actually went through their protocol twice, and they told me that I was normal, and so I was a little bit skeptical there because I've never been told I was normal before. So
Okay. Did you find that was something getting sort of knocked out three times in a row? Were you thinking after the first one that the second one felt different, or the third one felt different? Is that what you ultimately thought? No, I've had enough of this for the sake of my future, I guess.
um, it's not really. Honestly, the only one that was bad was the first one in Ireland, and that guy was really good, and he's still fighting the UFC right now, and that was the only time I was really out. Like all the other ones, I was just kind of fell over, flashed out, and I was fine after that. And I never had, from any of them, I never had any um, further harmful things from it or anything like that. And I know
Yeah.
you're not supposed to sleep, you're not supposed to do a lot of stuff after the concussion, and a knockout is a concussion. So
Yep.
I slept those nights. I mean, it never really affected me. So
Do you know, there's been some rulings over here in the UK regarding children playing soccer and even just heading the ball. So the reason why I was looking to eventually get the surgeon onto the podcast to talk about that is his speciality was rugby. So he's done a lot of research on rugby. But even on like soccer or football, with the children heading the ball, everyone's really focused in on this now. And they're saying, some people are saying that heading the ball continuously is just as bad as getting punched in the head. So it's a huge thing, which might have repercussions for everything that we do eventually.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, they made the same ruling over here in soccer. On kids aren't allowed to head the ball. You have to be like a certain age, and I never played soccer, so I don't really know what the rules or anything like that. But I know that they are not allowed to head until a certain age.
Do you know that? Again, I'm definitely no expert, Chris. So this is just me thinking out loud, I guess. But I just think it's the last thing we would want is combat sports to be ultimately taken away from us, I guess. And I don't think that'll ever happen. But I just think it's a bit crazy that a kid can't head a football, but we're okay putting them into a martial arts tournament where they get punched and kicked in the head continuously. There doesn't seem to be any.
I don't know. I think that we're a little bit oversensitive about just about everything right now. And I mean, yeah, there's probably going to be repercussions and everything. But like I played football, I wrestled. Like I didn't play the safest sports. I knew I wasn't going to play the safest sports, but I wasn't the smartest guy to start with, so I wasn't really too worried about it.
Well, you've got a political science degree, so listen. You're talking yourself down there a wee bit, I think. Right, buddy. Listen, let's jump in. As I say, I've got a lot of stuff written down here that I want to touch with you. So, one of the things that I think is really different between the US and the UK is just how much importance is put onto sport. And I know you've got lots of experience in collegiate wrestling, for example. So anytime I've been to the US, I've driven by or visited college football stadiums, for example, and they're actually sometimes bigger than the stadiums we have here for professional sports. It seems to be such a huge thing. So let's start on that. And if you can tell us a wee bit about how you got into wrestling in school and college and just about that full process, because it's something that I don't have any knowledge on at all, to be honest.
So I actually went to a Catholic school until 4th grade, and you weren't allowed to play any sports except for basketball, and you weren't allowed to start basketball to a certain, like there was all these restrictions. And so they put a flyer out that there was wrestling starting up, and I played baseball at the time, and I wanted to try something else. So then I went to this wrestling practice, and I just started wrestling, and I just never quit, I guess. And
what age would you have been then? What age would you have been? 7, right? Wow, okay.
Yes, 2nd grade. I was 7 years old, and I liked it. I liked being there. I was always a physical kid, so I liked doing that, and I kind of stuck with it. The school that I went to, like the public school that I went to, we didn't have wrestling until I was in 8th grade, and we got our program. So all the kids that were on our team, I went to school with, but we wrestled for a different school that no longer exists anymore. And so like wrestling's a little bit different than say football or basketball. Like the area I'm from is really big in football and basketball. Like there's a lot of schools that put a lot of pro football players out. And so there is a huge emphasis on sports, but depending on what area you're in, like the South is real big, like say Florida, Texas, they're really big on football, but they're also really big on baseball and other things. So I think that has a huge factor on what sports you play because of that. Like Western Pennsylvania, where I'm from, is one of the best wrestling areas in the entire world. And I mean, I think we had like 4 or 5 guys in the national finals for college this year. And 4 or 5 out of 20 is pretty high numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
And that doesn't really like, I think sports are really emphasized in the United States because people can make money off of them. And I mean, that's what everybody cares about at the end of the day. And wrestling isn't one of those sports you can make a lot of money on. It's same with the MMA. And so to wrestle or to do MMA, you really have to have a love of it, because you're not getting that kickback on the back end where you can take care of yourself or take care of a family or anything like that.
Yeah, that's something I want to investigate the wrestling a little further. But as we spoke about before the podcast, I do want to touch on that money side of things, because I've been talking about that with Phil Ramirez Jr. actually over the last couple of weeks. We've been batting back and forth. I think people get the idea sometimes that everybody's a Conor McGregor or everybody's a Khabib who's making millions and millions of dollars, but there's a million tiers under that where people don't. But as I say, we'll touch on that. We'll touch on that a wee bit later. So, how can you describe to us the support, the training, and just the full process of beginning wrestling as a 7-year-old and then going all the way up to being 2 times NCAA AllAmerican, and actually what's involved in that as well? Because when I was reading up on the NCAA, again, I was thinking we've got nothing, to my knowledge, like that over here. So your journey in wrestling, really.
So actually, because of the area I was from, like, I was way more interested in playing football. So I kind of split my time between playing football and wrestling all through growing up and things like that. And they kind of helped me work. They kind of work together to help me in each other, because as a kid in this area, you have to cut weight to play football, which is kind of counterproductive in a lot of areas. Like, I was one of the bigger kids, so I had to cut weight for football. So I was cutting weight. I started playing football when I was 10, and I was cutting weight from the time like August when we would start wrestling or start football, all the way till March when wrestling ended. So I cut weight a lot when I was a little kid. And so a lot of the coaches that I had for football, also I had for wrestling as well. So having those guys around me all year round also helped me develop as a athlete in both sports. And I mean, it was hard at first. Like, the first couple of years, I mean, if you're not good at a sport that's a team sport, and you can really kind of like hide in the crowd a little bit till you develop a little more and get better at it.
Yeah.
But wrestling, you go and you're not good, and you go against somebody in practice every single day who is good, you're gonna take your beatings every once in a while. So that was one thing. I think I just like being in the crowd of those people, and I never. Once you lose, like me personally, once I lose once, or once I get beat, like, I'm not going to stop until you can't beat me anymore. So I think that mentality really helped me out big time. And I just kind of stuck with it. And then once I got to about 10th grade, I started wrestling freestyle, which is the wrestling you see in the Olympics and stuff.
Okay. Yep.
Wrestling, our season would end in March, and then freestyle season would start in April and go all the way to August. So all summer I was working, going to wrestling practice, and then going to football practice as well. And so my summers all through high school, they weren't the typical summers that everybody else had. I was busy, and like by the time I got home, I didn't even want to shower after all that. I just wanted to, like, as soon as I sat down, I just like fell asleep half the time. So
yep.
It was a hard process, but I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
When you mentioned weight cutting there, I had a friend of mine on a couple of weeks ago who's a Muay Thai fighter, and he was talking about weight cutting. Some of the stories, some of the weight he was talking about having to cut is quite unbelievable. just to confirm what you said there, from what age were you weight cutting for your sports, and what was involved in that? Because some as a 10-year-old, right? So
yeah,
okay,
my parents hated it. They tried to get me to quit sports because they hated that I cut weight for them.
that's for football, American football, and for wrestling, or just for wrestling?
Both, for both.
Right. Okay. If now my wee guy's 8, so 2 years. If he joined a football soccer team over here, and they were saying, "Oh, this kid has to cut weight," people, it just doesn't make sense. So, can you explain a wee bit of how that was put over to you, and what was that? How does a 10-year-old cut weight? Like, obviously, dieting, but as a 10-year-old,
yeah. I mean, I guess I just started like back then. I'm 10. I don't know anything about stuff like that. So like some of the parents that were like, and I remember the one kid's mom was trying to like give us advice and everything about how to do it. Well, basically me, because I always had to hide it because my parents didn't like that I was cutting weight.
Yeah.
I basically kind of did like an Atkins diet almost at that age until I like learned a little bit more about everything. So like I would eat vegetables or proteins and I wouldn't eat anything else. And then we did the typical wear garbage bags and sweat underneath. I mean, it's pretty funny seeing a kid with a garbage bag and sweatpants and sweatshirt underneath his football pads in August. Like, you're like, what the heck is wrong with this kid? But I mean, we did what we had to do. There was a gym nearby that we went and sat in a sauna for, and we didn't do anything crazy extreme. And there was, I think, 4 of us. We called ourselves the Hogs. Well, the coaches called us the Hogs. We were the ones that always had to cut weight. So we had each other to do it with. But I mean, it was hard as a 10-year-old to not be able to do any of that other stuff.
I think we'll just leave that one there because I've got no words for that. Right. So obviously your success continued, or you got more successful as you progressed into what would be high school and then college. So if we can jump ahead, we will go back a wee bit, but if you can jump ahead and just explain to us what being an NCAA AllAmerican is, what is that?
So it's basically so if you're a state champ or a national champ in high school, it would be the same thing, only a little bit more difficult in college because you figure you have the entire country and you have the best of the high school kids that are now on less teams. So you have a better pool of athletes coming through. So it's just it's the largest tournament in the country. And I was a Division II. I wrestled at Division II. So there's Division I, II, III, and then there's some stuff underneath that too. Yep. But I got to wrestle with some wrestle at the same time and with some of the best guys in the UFC and Bellator now. I mean, Derek Brunson was in the conference with us. He wrestled a weight class below me. Corey Anderson was in our conference as well. And then Kamar Usman was in the same division as us. Wrestled at the same time, and it was it's cool to see those guys around now. And like I've fought on some cards with those guys, and I've trained with some of those guys, and like we kind of all still remember each other a little bit. And like it's kind of cool to have like, oh hey, like I remember you from 10 years ago before anybody knew who any of us were. So.
Yep. So really successful wrestling career in high school, really successful, really successful, obviously, in college. What pushed you towards martial arts then after your wrestling experience? Because obviously you ended up in the biggest fighting championships in the world. So talk to us a wee bit about leaving college and then progressing and moving from just wrestling into martial arts, if you could.
So it actually started while I was in college.
Okay.
My sophomore year of college, my coach comes up to me and the school I went to, we had a guy, his name was Carlton Hasselrig, and he is the most successful national champ of all time. He's won 6 national championships, and then he went on and played professional football for the Steelers.
Okay.
And was an all-pro and stuff like that. He's a legend in the wrestling community, and especially at our school. And he was about 15 years older than me. So, like, I always knew who he was, but I didn't know him.
Yep.
And sophomore year, my coach comes up. He's like, "Hey, Carlton's fighting. He needs somebody to work out with. You want to try it out?" And so I was like, "Yeah, definitely. I want to try it out." So I started working out with Carlton right as my sophomore year. And I didn't know this at the time, but he didn't really like working out with a lot of people. A lot of people kind of either couldn't handle it with him or just rubbed him the wrong way. And he had a good eye for people who were going to try to take advantage of him or people who just weren't good people in general. So he told coach that he wanted me to keep working out with him, and I ended up moving in with him after college, and he let me live with him and his family, and I just started fighting as soon as I got done with NCAAs that year, and it kind of just kept snowballing from there.
So did you have any, obviously you had all of this wrestling experience, but did you have any striking experience before you went into mixed martial arts, or did you just?
Not really any technical experience, no.
Okay, so where did that come in then? Because I think it's like, okay, I'm speaking to the expert here, so maybe I should ask rather than say, but I believe that it's generally recognised now that wrestling, you're talking about people like Kamaru Usman, for example, these champions all have Habib, who's obviously just retired, but that wrestling seems to be the number one base that people are looking for now, even over and above Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was the base for a good while. But you had this advantage of being such a good wrestler. But did you just go in there without having any structured striking training at all?
Yeah, basically. I didn't. It's kind of funny to say. Like, I was actually talking to somebody else about this not too long ago, but I didn't start taking striking classes or anything other than live sparring. I did nothing with striking until after I lost my first UFC fight. So it's kind of funny. It was like I was fighting the UFC and I had not one shred of striking experience in my life. Like, so it doesn't really seem that smart right now when I look back and think about it.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. When you look back on that, would you have? Was that just because you got the opportunity and you said, "I'm going to go for this," or would you have maybe, looking back, taken a little bit more time or try to build that skill set a wee bit better?
Looking back, I would have started trying to build that way earlier. I mean, I was fighting for probably, that was 3.5, maybe 4 years before that. And I was just either sparring live or rolling live. I wasn't learning anything that I wasn't learning on the fly. Yeah. And that was a huge mistake that I made. And there was plenty of coaches that was like, "No, you got to do this," and I wouldn't listen to them. So, like, I can't really blame anybody but myself for that. And I mean, I was having so much success without it that it was like, "Oh, well, I don't even need this." And I was like, it was a bad decision. If I could go back, that would be the one thing I would have trained a lot more technique. I would have drilled a lot more, and I wouldn't have sparred as much. I mean, I was sparring 4 to 5 times a week, like live hard. So it wasn't the best or smartest thing to do.
What's your opinion on that? Actually, this is something that just came to me when you mentioned that. For someone who made a conscious effort to withdraw themselves from that type of competition because of head injuries, for example, what's your opinion on sparring? I think everybody talks about the ties all the time and it being very sort of touch, and nothing heavy. And then you look at some gyms where sparring literally is fighting. It's not sparring at all. It's just banging each other as hard as you can. Like, how much of that do you need, and how much do you think people do due to sort of lack of education on it, I guess?
I think everyone's different. Even now being retired and stuff, like I still do, and I still can spar quite a bit. And, but it's one, having good partners who are going to take care of you. Like when I spar and I'm sparring somebody who's newer or not as high level, I'll hit them hard, but I'm not going to hit them hard to the head.
Yeah.
I'll give them good body shots. I'll kick their legs and stuff. And if you have somebody who's going to take care of you in that way, where they're not going to put that damage on your brain, you have sore ribs or a sore leg, you take a couple of days off and you're fine. But you hit somebody in the head and you say you knock somebody out by accident. I mean, you should take some serious time off where one, you're not going to get better. And two, that's one less hit that you can take. Cause I mean, I'm a firm believer that everybody has a set number that they're allowed to take.
Yep. I think people, this is maybe a good question to ask you, Chris, actually. So wrestling has this reputation, a positive reputation for hard training, like pushing it to the absolute limit. And I think you can probably put sparring, especially talking about striking acts, you can put that in that category. Where do you think as a wrestler you were ever trained too hard? Do you think there was ever times where your body would have been better or would have been healthier if you had trained a little bit sort of differently?
So I had the coach that I had in college. He's actually the winningest college wrestling coach in the history of forever. And so I got him later on in his coaching career, and he was very smart about that. He would push us and he would torture us. I mean, he tortured us, and but he was smart about when to pull it back. Every time we came around the qualifier for NCAAs or for NCAAs, we started kind of toning it down and we weren't going so hard. So I think injury-wise, yeah, you can go too hard in wrestling, but at the same time, you need to push hard in wrestling or MMA. And I'll say this is, training for fights and stuff, it's hard. Nothing is as hard as a college wrestling practice. Not to this day, nothing has been that hard as far as just pushing your body to the limit.
Let's talk about that then. So, if you could amalgamate a week's worth of training into just giving us an example of one session. So how long would it last? And we've got lots of time, so break it down and what would actually be involved. Because I've heard about sort of college wrestling training sessions. So describe one to us, and I really thought.
So like it was pretty much we practiced. He tried to keep us from like 3:30. He said till 5:30, but sometimes it was till 6:30 or later, depending on if he thought we were working hard enough or not. But that was Monday through Friday, and unless we had tournaments or something on a Saturday or a match during the week. But we would lift or drill for an hour in the morning, and that was sometimes we got a pretty hard lift in, but most of the time when we were drilling and stuff, it was more focused on technique. Mm-hmm. But anywhere from 2 to 3.5 hour session from 3:30 in the afternoon, you came in and you got our warm up was like a mile or 2 mile run, whatever he was feeling that day. Yep. And then we would go in the room and it was balls to the wall from the second you stepped on the mat until you ended. And if you weren't working hard, he was going to keep you until you did work hard. And you just, like, there was some times where there would be puddles of sweat all over the room. And it's just like, looking back at it, it's just like, man, we were really going at it back then.
Yep. Do you know, it's when The other big difference I always, and again, my experience is being honest, is only through talking to people or watching movies where the college coach, whether it be basketball, wrestling, is employed by the college. I mean, that's how serious you guys take it. The high school would have a wrestling coach. Over here in the UK, in most cases, it would be one of the teachers who would coach the soccer team once a week, maybe, and then they would have a game on a Friday afternoon, for example. But the mindset between the two nations it's like chalk and cheese. It really is different.
Yeah, and like there's like this thought for a lot of people over here. So you have the people who go to college for sports, and then you have the people who go to college just to go to college. And so the people who go to college just to go to college is broken up into the people who want to party and the people who are actually there for a purpose. And so those people who are there for a purpose, they're like, they get mad a lot of the times at these athletes because they feel that we get special treatment and stuff because sometimes we need a test moved or we need to send a paper or something in online, but they don't realize that on top of the same classes that they're taking, we're also putting 20 to 30 hours of work in that's physically exhausting us on top of that. And so that's the side of college sports, especially that the mainstream doesn't really show. Everybody shows somebody winning a national championship or things like that, but they don't show the work that you're putting on the back end. And like most of the time for us, we would go, like when I would work out with Carlton, that wasn't considered my practice. So I had to go morning practice, I had to go to my afternoon practice, and then I would have to go work out with Carlton afterwards. And a lot of times I missed dinner because the cafeteria was only open until 6:30. So, I mean, I was a poor college student. I couldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go buy something. Like I just in the morning and eat in the morning then.
Yeah. Do you know, I've got something written down here, which might be a segue into discussing the beginning of your mixed martial arts career and then eventually getting to the UFC. But I had you down here as 285 pounds during your wrestling career, and you fought at 185 in mixed martial arts.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So, right. Let's talk about that 100 pounds. So, was that? I'm really interested in how combat athletes like yourself, how you torture yourself cutting weight, for example, and how your body changes, but then the negative effects, the long-term negative effects that may or may not have. So just in general, why were you wrestling at 285 pounds but only fighting at 185? Bear in mind that I know nothing about wrestling, so just treat me like an absolute beginner.
My freshman year of high school, so I mean, in high school, you're still growing, you're still developing as a human being. So my freshman year, I wrestled 171. My sophomore year, I wrestled 189. And then there was a weight class in high school. It was 215 pounds. And me and another kid that was on our team, we were two of the better kids on our team. So we would both weigh in at 215, and then one of us would bump up. Well, we figured out quickly that he could not wrestle at heavyweight. And whether it was a mental block or whatever, he was good enough. He couldn't do it. So I just told my coach, I was like, I'll go to heavyweight, no big deal. And it ended up being one of the best decisions I could ever made. That was the first year I went undefeated until playoffs. And then I did the same thing the next year, wrestling heavyweight. So then going to college, I was going as a heavyweight, and I only weighed about 215, 210 pounds. And I got there, and my coach was like, you need to get bigger. Like, we need to put some weight on you. So I thought he was telling me to go drink beer and eat pizza. So I got really fat over the next year and a half, 2 years. And I got up to about 280 pounds. And then I got yelled at by him again because that was not what he meant when he said And so I started losing a little bit of weight, and I wrestled 285, but I weighed, by the time my senior year was over, I weighed about 245.
Okay. Yep.
So when I started fighting, my first couple fights were at heavyweight and as an amateur. And then I was just out of college, didn't have a job, I was going to do this as a job. So didn't really have that much money to buy food. So I naturally came down. I got to about 225, and we were like, hey, you're short, because I'm only 5'11", and like, why don't we cut to 205? It's only 20 pounds away. And so that was no big deal. I just changed up my diet a little bit and cleaned it up some and stopped drinking beer. And so then 205, I had a couple more there, and then we figured, hey, why not? We could get to 185 at 5'11". You're not that short. You're still going to be a little bit shorter than everybody, but you're still in the ballpark. So cut to 185, and I just kind of bumped between 185 and 205 for the rest of my career.
I always ask this. I think this is a really interesting question for any fighter. The fights you had at 185 pounds, so you would have weighed in the day before, 185 pounds. What did you walk into the cage at?
About 205.
So okay, and so you were bumping up 20 pounds in 24 hours, which isn't uncommon. No. People out with the fight sort of game are always really surprised. That's why I always like to ask, or one of the reasons I always like to ask that, because I wish there was more weight divisions, and I wish people fought at their weight, because you're not alone. There's nobody weighs in 185 pounds and then fights at 185 pounds.
And it's not good, especially with the head injuries. It's not good for that weight, and then the rehydration afterwards. That's probably the worst thing you could do if you're going to get hit in the head the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I walk around smaller right now than I did when I was cutting weight. I mean, I would cut from about 220, 225 to 185, but now I walk around about 205. So
how long would it take you to get from 220 to 185? And how long would your fight camp be then?
It would be anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks. I would try to get down to 205. Like, I would try to lose that first 20 pounds, like, really quick in the first 3 weeks, say. And it was generally pretty easy, because all you had to do was stop eating pizza and wings and actually start doing the things you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have done less of because when you're in a fight camp, you can't do anything. Like, you can't do anything that's gonna, like, it's 100% on that fight and nothing else. So you can't go out and have bad food. You can't go out with your friends. Like, it's the most fun thing I did was sit at home and play video games while I was cutting weight, so I could distract my brain from focusing on that. So week after the fight, it was like, you wanted to do, me personally anyway, I wanted to do all that stuff. So I had my bad meals planned for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next week. So I would get up to 225 just during that week, because I would be eating so bad. And I wish I would not have done that and kind of spread it out a little bit more. I think I would have been able to control my weight a little bit better. And I was always good at cutting. That was one of the things that I was better at, was the weight cut. Most of the time I got to eat and drink the night before weigh-ins. And that's pretty uncommon generally for everybody that I see anyway.
So there's a little bit of math there. So let's weigh this up. The advantage. So what's happening is when fighters are cutting weight, they are fighting at 185, for example. They walk into the cage or the ring at 205, and they're hoping that strength plays a part in the fight. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right. Now go ahead, Chris.
That's the what everybody has in their head behind it.
Okay, so let's weigh that up, however, against the fact that your body, and especially your head, has been drained of so much fluids and then taking lots of contact in the head. Surely, and again, I'll get your opinion as someone who's had so much experience in combat sports now. When does that become not okay? When does that risk become too much to allow weight cuts to continue to happen like that?
I mean, I think that depends on. It's always a risk. So that's the thing that a lot of people in the general public don't realize is anytime you sign up for any of this stuff, it's always a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, we have in wrestling now, for high school and college, it's what they call a hydration test.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the year, they take your body fat, they test the your hydration in your body, and they weigh you, and they tell you what weight you can wrestle at for the entire year, and you're not allowed to wrestle lower than that weight. Now, that's only been around for about 10 years, and wrestlers have already figured out how to cheat it in a large part, but they're at least trying to take steps to get that extreme weight cut out. The UFC has taken steps, because a big thing for the UFC was, for all fighters, is to take a saline solution bag and get an IV after your weigh-in. And so now if you get caught by USADA and you get drug tested and there's something in it, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what it is, but there's something in the saline solution that if they test you the next day for the drug test, they can see if you did an IV bag.
Okay.
And so that's illegal now. And so they are taking steps to make that safer. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to be extreme enough and somebody wants it that bad, they're going to find ways around it. I mean, that guy who Kama just fought, Awad, I think his name is.
Who fought? Sorry, Chris.
Kama Worthy just fought him a couple months ago. He has a brother that fights too. The last name is Awad, I think. Or I can't remember the guy's name. He got in trouble with USADA, and they wouldn't release what it was. They snuck something in the room, but if you really think about it, there's a good chance that that's what it was. It was, and maybe it was a steroid or what. It was probably an IV bag that they were trying to sneak in the room after getting tested or something like that. So
that's probably a good time to move the conversation on a wee bit, because I fully understand that there's a couple of angles to this. Now, people generally, if you're a fighter, you want to be a fighter. So you could go and get another job, whatever level of job that is. But if you want to be a fighter, or you are a fighter, it's something you've got a passion for. But there still has to be a duty of care towards those people. And two areas where I think that, and this is stuff I've been talking to Philip about, two areas where I think it's way behind is the safety of fighters, which is hard to justify when the sport involves putting two people in a cage and having them punch each other in the head. But the weight cutting's one of the things. The second thing's pay. Now, you've obviously had experience with the two biggest. I think it's probably generally agreed the UFC's number one, and Bellator's definitely up there as well. Can you share some experiences with us about going in at that sort of entry-level fighter and just how you're treated, what the rewards are, if anything, at such a level? Because I think people still look at the UFC and think everybody is a Conor McGregor or everybody's making that sort of money, and it's absolutely untrue.
I mean, as how the promotions had treated me, the promotions both treated me great. I mean, like I have no complaints about any of that kind of stuff. I mean, they always had us staying somewhere nice. They things like that. That was always good. The biggest thing is the pay. I mean, I had to work a full-time job while I was fighting in the UFC. So I'm fighting in the biggest organization. So over here, you would compare it to the NFL. Over there, you probably compare it to the Premier League.
Yep,
And,
yep.
and so like you have those guys who are making millions and millions of dollars, and they're probably, I mean, not probably, they're not working as hard as most of the fighters are.
Yep.
And they're making millions, which if they invested properly, they'll probably be able to retire after a 10-year career. Where me, and I know a lot of other guys as well, that had to work at least a part-time, if not a full-time job, just to pay their own bills. So like they're making a lot of money off of these fights and everything. And I am not even making enough to take care of my own self. And I'm not I don't buy nice things. Like my house costs, I have a RAV4 car and my house costs less than my car. So I don't have all these nice, big, extravagant things, but like you at least need to pay the guys enough to live on.
Yep.
I don't know what the answer is to fix that, but they have made strides. I know we have some guys in Bellator, and I still work with a couple guys who are in the UFC, and the pay is a lot better now. Like I have pretty good idea of what the guys are getting paid now, and they're getting paid better, but it's not the right amount that they should be getting paid.
That's the next part of the conversation, I guess, about what they should be getting paid, because it's a really tough place to be, because if you're a Dana White of this world and you're running an organization like that, if Chris Dempsey says, I'm not going to fight for that cash, there's another 1,000 young fighters.
Yep.
So how do we bridge that gap? And this isn't just mixed martial arts, it's kickboxing, it's this boxing. And that. It's boxing.
Boxing is terrible with it.
Yep. So how will that ever get fixed? How do you? People are putting their life on the line. That is hit. I know that the death rate in mixed martial arts is really, really low. I understand that, but you're talking about being concussed 3 and 4 times in the space of a couple of years. 20, 30 years from now is where that might come to sort of bite in the backside, and you've been pennies for that. So, and not just you, I'm talking about any fighter.
Right.
Unless you're right at the top.
So I don't know if it'll ever be fixed, and I don't like. So I feel like I do this well. I can look at it from both sides. So technically, we're subcontracted. We're not. We're 1099 subcontracted through the UFC. So or whatever organization. So one, we don't have any overhead to take care of like they do with the venue and things like that. And two, there are 30,000 more of me's that want to go in there that will fight for that. So that side of the purse, I don't know how to or if it ever will get fixed, because you literally are a prize fighter. You're fighting for a prize. And in MMA, at least, I know it's different in boxing, but in MMA, at least, if you win, you get paid twice of what you were supposed to get paid. Yeah. So there are, I don't know if it will get fixed, and I don't know if it can get fixed. I think the whole Reebok and now Venom deal that UFC has, it is the biggest slap in the face to the fighters, honestly.
Yep.
Really affected me because I was brand new. My first 2 fights were before the Reebok deal, and my second 2 were after the Reebok deal. So financially, it didn't really affect me one way or another. But I was down in Dallas, and I was training at a place where Johnny Hendricks was there as well. And that was when Johnny was the champ. Mm-hmm. And he took, I won't say the numbers, but he took an enormous hit on his sponsorship money because he wasn't allowed to wear those guys on his shorts anymore. Yeah. So one, you're controlling the purses of all these fighters, which that in my mind, you really can't fix that. You can't, because of the way it's set up right now. It would have to be a completely different setup to fix it. But if you're controlling how much these fighters are getting paid and then not allowing them to make money in the one way that they could make money, I think that's pretty not nice of the promotion company to do.
We've got obviously lots of listeners who will know exactly what that situation was, but just for people who don't, what Chris is alluding to there is the UFC fighters were paid the money that we're talking about at the moment, but then they were also allowed to have pretty much unlimited sponsorship on their shorts and their t-shirts that they wore to the ring. So if they were getting lousy money from the organisation, they could still make a pretty penny advertising sports gear or beer or anything. So then what the UFC done was they took that right away and they signed a deal with Reebok at the time, which is now just changed to Venom Fightwear. So it meant that the UFC, any of these fighters weren't allowed to have sponsorship deals. Now, the UFC said that was because they wanted to sort of standardise the look of the sport and it was apparently more professional. It was for the organisation, but it was a real kick in the teeth to the fighters.
Right, and that's fine if they want to make it look more professional, but they're still making money from Reebok and Venom. So if you want to do it and say it's only to be more professional, then split that money up between the fighters. Then then nobody has an argument against you. And when so they also make the argument, well, you're still allowed to get sponsors, but for somebody like me or another like low-level guy, you're getting local people, local businesses who are going to give you a couple hundred, maybe $1,000, and just to help you out for no other reason, but they're a good person and they want to see their name on your shorts. Yeah. So you take that away, those people aren't going to sponsor you because they can't, like, they're not going to get anything back from it. So yeah, you're still going to have the Conor McGregors, the Amanda Nunez's, and the Stipe Miocic's. Like they're going to get their commercials from the big companies and they're going to get paid from sponsors that way. But you completely crippled everyone under the top 1-2%.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the best one of the best sponsorship stories I ever heard, and I'm certain it was in boxing, and I'm certain the fighter was Danny Williams, who was a British heavyweight fighter, and he fought Tyson on one of Mike Tyson's sort of comebacks. This must have been early 2000s, maybe late 90s, I think early 2000s, but the Sun newspaper, which is a complete rag over here, but they put their name on Danny Williams' sole of his boot, and they paid him £1 million for that. I'm certain it was £1 million. So the idea was when Tyson knocked him out, everyone could see the sole of his boot. And I'm certain it was Danny Williams. I might be wrong there, and I might be slightly off with the money, but it was close to that. To get
that's pretty funny. They're betting on him losing.
pretty much. But again, people hear these stories and they think that it's commonplace, and it's something that obviously I'm passionate about. Just what you've described, just a smidgen of what you've went through to get to that level, and then not to be rewarded for it really, well, it cracks me up actually. It really annoys me.
And I mean, that's not even, I mean, every single fighter could tell you stories of losing friends or their family not wanting you to do it, or your family and friends not wanting you to do it. And not because they're not good people, just because they don't want to see you get hurt. So you have all this other stuff, like that was just financially and physically and stuff, but you have all stuff on your weighing on your mind mentally too, of, oh, well, you're not going to make it, this is dumb, you're going to hurt yourself, you're not getting paid, and you're torturing yourself. So people don't realize there's that side of things as well, is like you see these guys in business suits or whatever, they're like, oh, my job's so stressful, this and that. Like, yeah, I'm sure your job's stressful, but you don't have to worry about it that much, bud. Like,
so after deciding that, so I'm going to go back to this point, Chris, and we won't labour on it, but I think it's a really important point that you mentioned at the beginning. Would you say that the head trauma was your deciding factor? I don't want to put words into your mouth.
No, that's why I stopped.
Yeah.
So, funny story about that. So I had to get a new dentist. Something happened to my dentist. He left. I don't know the story there, but I got a new dentist, and he x-rayed my teeth, and he didn't know anything about me other than my insurance information. And he said, oh, you have an impacted molar. And I was like, I had no idea what that meant. So he's like, yeah, have you ever like stood up real hard and hit your head off of something and got like real dizzy, like you were going to get knocked out? And I started laughing at that point, and he was like, I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. Why? He goes, well, your tooth is sitting on your nerve. And so anytime your head gets jarred at all, it's going to send a signal up through your brain, and it's almost going to feel like you're going to get knocked out. And I just started laughing so hard after that. And then I told him what I did beforehand and why I didn't. So I'm not really worried about long-term stuff now. One, after that, and two, after going through that concussion protocol twice. The doctor actually said it looks like I've never been hit in the head before from one hit. And I, again, didn't believe him. But I've actually, I miss it a lot. And I've thought about doing it again. One, because I have my weight under control. I'm sparring guys who are high-level guys and doing well with them and everything. So I'm not so much worried about the head trauma anymore, but it's also because I have more experience and knowledge with everything. We, as a gym, I was the first person from Pittsburgh to make it to the UFC. And so we didn't really have anybody around here that knew anything about how to go about stuff. So we messed up a lot of stuff with my career. And that's fine. Now we can use those mistakes and those mess ups to help other fighters not make those same mistakes. And we have a couple guys right now that are Cody Law and Dalton Rasta. They came out of our gym, and they had the advantage of us messing up before, so we knew not to mess their stuff up. And they're doing very well, and they're being successful. So yeah, it kind of sucks a little bit, but at the same time, we just use the knowledge for somebody else.
Let's give the gym. So I think it's the Mat Factory you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Let's give them a quick shout out. Just tell us a wee bit about the gym and the work you do there as well, and just what's going on there.
So Isaac Greeley is the owner there. He also wrestled at the same college as me. He's a little bit older. I won't call him out. I won't say how much older. But he's like a real life G.I. Joe doll. He's a doctor, has a family. He'll rip your head off on the mat, but then he'll also like reattach it for you and like make sure you're taken care of afterwards.
Yeah.
We've got Dom Mazzata over there too. It's kind of us three right now coaching the fight team. Dom fought several times in Bellator, and he actually got his start at Phillips Gym.
That's right. Yep.
So and then Philip was one of my coaches as well. I always got to give him a shout out because I probably wouldn't be on this podcast without him right now. So
well, there you go. A quick shout out to the Philomeris family because, as you say, Dom started there as a Taekwondo student, and I know that Philip's done a bit of work with a lot of you guys. So, and you'll not find a nicer guy either. So, we'll give him a shout out.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, that's anytime we get a fighter in that wants to work on their striking, and one that I know is going to put the work in. I always mention Philip's name because Philip's no nonsense, and that's that's why I like him. He's not gonna ever be late. He's not gonna cancel a session, but you better be the same way back with him. So
yeah. So you decided to take a step away from the mixed martial arts and have been really successful in just concentrating on your grappling career. So is that primarily just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, or?
Yeah, I mean, so these tournaments now, like you had these catch wrestling tournaments, you had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you had everybody wanted to do their own style. But now we're to the point in martial arts where if you go to a tournament, you're going to get a little bit of everything. So whether it's a wrestler, a Aikido guy, a Jiu-Jitsu guy, I mean, you have to know a little bit of everything if you want to compete at the highest level. So, and you don't have to know offensively how to do it all, but you have to know it defensively. So it's pretty much all just grappling now.
Yeah. And what's your ambitions there then? Where can that take you?
I don't know. I just love doing it. I mean, it was kind of the same thing with fighting. Like, the whole pay thing sucked with fighting, but I still would have traded it for the world. I mean, I had an offer my senior year of college that to be a graduate assistant down in like North Carolina. So I was political science major. I was going to coach wrestling and get my law degree, and I chose to let people punch me in the face instead. So my life would be much different if I would have made the other choice, but I still wouldn't trade it for the world. So with grappling, it's just I'm in the gym, I'm grappling with all these guys, and I'm coaching them and going live with them. So might as well compete. I mean, I'm a competitor. I always want to test myself, and I've got to go against some of the best in the world. I've beat some of the best in the world, and I've lost to some of the best in the world, and I'm right there with everybody in my head. So I just want to make sure I'm right and I'm not just fooling myself.
Yeah, I think the guys that come out of Pittsburgh, I obviously follow you guys, but from afar, and some of the stuff, obviously, I don't understand, like the college setup and stuff. So it's been brilliant to follow all of you. Dom, Cody Law's on a tear at the minute.
Cody went to the same college as me and Isaac.
Yeah, Philip mentioned him when he was on the podcast himself, maybe about a year ago now, and said, "Yeah, you got to look out for this guy." And he just won again the other week there, so he did. So, yeah, these are a bunch of really inspirational guys. So, listen, Chris, I won't keep you any longer. It's been so interesting just hearing your different experiences. You're a top man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And maybe we'll get you back on. Maybe we'll get you and Philip back on at the same time, perhaps.
That'd be awesome. We got to make a trip back out there and do a little clinic.
You know, when the world opens back up again, we were actually meant to be in Pittsburgh last year. That was the plan anyway. And then nobody was anywhere last year. But yeah,
you guys go back and forth, right? 1 year they send a bunch of people out there, and then the next year you guys send a bunch of people in, right?
Well, it doesn't happen as regular as that, but we definitely try to make the trip over to the States as often as we can. And you just pick again, and you get introduced to people like yourself and Dom. We trained with Dom up at Philip's school a couple of years back, and it's just wonderful experiences to get to train with people that are at your level. Just always adding to the experience. So, okay, Chris, I will leave it there, buddy. And listen, I can't thank you enough. It's been really, really interesting and enjoyable for me.
I appreciate you having me on the show. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's not every day that somebody halfway across the world asks you to do a podcast with them. So I really do appreciate it.
And as I say, this won't be the last time. All right, my man?
Definitely.
Okay, take care.
See you later. Thank you.
See you later, Chris. Bye-bye. Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.